Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are in Isaiah. I'm going to say Acts, I don't know why, but Isaiah chapter 40. And we're going to pick up at verse 9. Now, I am doing a slow crawl through chapter 40. And the reason why I'm doing this slow crawl is because God makes some declarations about himself. Now, we have to understand something as we read this, as we move through this. That first and foremost, he's making these declarations to Israel, his people. That's the first thing. And the declarations, even though I believe by faith the declaration, God is the creator of the earth, etc., 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 right? I believe this. And I say that because there are other people who don't believe it, people who reject the knowledge of God, okay? But we should know that God is speaking to people who should receive this and who have already experienced this as a matter of history with God. In other words, they know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that God created the nation of Israel from the seed of Abraham. Right? They know that. They know that God delivered them from the mightiest kingdom at that time, Egypt, broke their backs. That God brought them, divided the Red Sea, and brought them through the Red Sea. They experienced that. That God experienced them, that God delivered them from all of their enemies that surrounded them. And in some cases, that they were too weak to fight against. So at this time here, they have history with God, and they, as God is making these declarations that he is the creator, they know this more than any other nation. The sad thing about this is that some of these nations have more faith in God than they do. So I want to, that's why I said I want to not gloss over some of these declarations because I think they're important to us, even though in a sense you can say we already believe it, we already know it. But here we go. Isaiah, let's go to Isaiah chapter 40. We're going to pick it up at verse 9. And then he says here, Zion, heralded of good news. Go up on a high mountain. Jerusalem, herald of good news. Raise your voice loudly. Raise it. Do not be afraid. Say to the cities of Jerusalem, here is your God. Now again, who is he saying this to? The cities of Jerusalem. Now remember, he's saying this roughly 116 years before the Babylonian Empire. And then he says, see, the Lord comes with strength, and his power establishes his rule. His reward is with him, and his gifts accompany him. Now, there's a couple of things here about this. First of all, he talks about the second coming of Jesus. When we look at the prophecy of the second coming, it is plain and simple. This is a good example of this. There are going to be many declarations of Jesus coming back. For a person to say that they could read the Bible and then not walk away and say that the second coming of Jesus is not promised or declared, there's something wrong with that belief system. Now, we can argue about the rapture. We can argue about when, the rapture is going to happen. If you are pre-trib or mid-trib or post-trib, we could talk about that. We could talk about all of that. I mean, we could debate that. What is not debatable is the second coming of Jesus Christ. So here he says again, see, the Lord comes. Right here, the Lord comes. That is something that is firmly established. You could say it is a essential of the Christian faith that the Lord comes. Now, as we often say, there is the near and far fulfillment of prophecies. So when it says here that Jesus comes, he came once, he's going to come again, the first coming and the second coming. That's why it's referred to as the second coming, because he came the first time. We know Jesus hadn't come the second time. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses had always had failed prophecies. One of their most grievous failed prophecy is the 1914 prediction that Jesus was going to return. Now, Christians don't you're just as bad. There are Christians that are just as bad that have had failed predictions, like 1988, 1989, I want to say 94, the 2000. We can go on and on. Many times people have prophesied stuff and failed. Okay. But the reason why the Jehovah's Witnesses, and by the way, I'm picking on them only because, and I probably shouldn't, because they really don't read their Bible and study their Bible. They are outside of the orthodoxy of Christianity. So in a sense, it's kind of an unfair thing that they're not Christians anyway, okay? But I'm using that because they do claim to read the Bible, right? They knock on your door, they have Bibles. And if they had read their Bibles, then, and I'm gonna say the same thing with Christians. You had a guy that wrote 88 reasons why Jesus is going to come back. He sold a lot of books. But Christians who try to attach a date on the second coming of Jesus or the rapture, they always fail. Now, here's the thing. We know it hasn't happened because what? Jesus hasn't come back yet. And that's why, again, let's look at these declarations of God right here. He hasn't come back. Okay? Look at this. Verse 5. And the glory of the Lord will appear, and all humanity together will see it, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. Has spoken. So one of the most fundamentally flawed people, when they teach that Jesus is coming back, when they try to attach a date on this, or if they try to declare that Jesus has come back. Now, Jesus would say, if someone tells you Jesus is out in the desert, don't believe him. They say he's over here, don't believe him. He's in a hidden place, don't believe him. Because he says, as the east is from the west, so the Lord's coming. The lightning will flash from the east, from the west. So will be the coming of Jesus. Why? Because all humanity together will see it. Secondly, Christians should stop being foolish to try to attach a date onto it. This is something God is going to do. So stop being stupid. Stop being foolish. And because one of the things is that you see people who will predict the coming, attach. That's bad enough. But then all of a sudden you have a group of people, and this is where it gets stupid. And I'm really being this way. Yeah, you're being stupid. That if I was to come to you and say, hey, Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back December 7th. Right? If I said that. December 7th is my birthday, so I'm gonna, okay. Let's say Jesus is thinking enough about my birthday to come back on my birthday, right? I am being funny. But if I say that, so this is now September, when this is September, and Jesus is gonna come back December the 7th. Then you have people that will then surmise, let's quit our jobs. Let's divest all of our investments. Then further stupidity, let's give it to the church. Let's give it to the pastor. Further stupidity is that people will move in together on a communal living, or meet together with the surrounding, in anticipation of Jesus coming in the sky. Like Jesus is going to say, hey guys, y'all meet in the stadium or meet out in the field. These things have actually happened. All stupid. All stupidity. Now, here's the thing, guys. Nowhere in Scripture does it ever instruct anyone to do this. Nowhere. Read your Bible. God is going to appear, and then all humanity together will see it. Now let's skip down. So this is what's going to happen. He's going to appear. The glory of the Lord will appear. All humanity together will see it, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. So again, that's going to be God's doing. Okay. And then he says, where am I at here? Verse 10. See, the Lord comes with strength, and his power establishes his rule. So let's stop for a moment. Because there's another verse I want you to see here. When he comes. Should I read this? It says, and his power establishes his rule, his reward is with him, and his gifts accompany him. So when he comes, we see, let me tell you this, prophecy is not hard to understand. None of the Bible is hard to understand. It's quite simple. When you come to certain subjects, however, they are exhaustive, meaning there's a lot of scriptures, but not difficult, not confusing. Like here, the Lord comes with strength. All will see him. So there's nothing that will say, I need to gather in the basement of a church. I need to divest my investments. I need to, quit my job. People have done that stupidly. People have done that. They have been misled, right? So even if you thought that, I'm going to go back to my analogy. Even if I thought that Jesus is going to come back on December 7th, even if I thought that, nowhere did it say that I should divest my investments, empty out my bank accounts, quit my job, and sit in someone's basement, field, or whatever, waiting for Jesus to come. That's stupid. Nowhere did it say that. So people are misguided because they're not reading their Bible. So the other thing is that when he comes, notice that he establishes, see, the Lord comes, notice this, with strength. And then it says, his power establishes his rule. Now, a lot of people will say, you know what, Jesus, I'm not getting why you, I'm not understanding why God does this or doesn't do this. Like there are people that will say, how come God doesn't eradicate evil? I remember a number of years ago, a guy said, if God would just appear to me, and if God would just do one thing for me. Now, I was working a phone bank for a church television ministry, and he just called in. And he would call in from time to time, and he would always say the same thing. He says, I just want to ask God just do something for me. One thing, he said. Take evil out the world. That's what he would make that claim. Just take evil out. Well, what I said in answer, I said, first of all, and again, we will see this. Um, but notice this. He says, so that's the request. So some people can augment that by saying God is evil because he tolerates evil. He doesn't eradicate evil. So my response to that always is that, well, God will come, and just because he doesn't do it now doesn't mean he's not whatever, that he's not who he says he is. Because notice that when God comes, he will come with strength. And then he says, in his power, his power will establish his rule. So there is coming a time when God will eradicate evil, rule with justice. And by the way, that's going to be so sweet. When you think about, even in America, one of the most freest nations, so-called, in the world, look at all of the injustice that you see. Look at all the injustice here. Why? Why is there such injustice? And the reason why is because of the sinfulness of man. That's why, the evilness of man. We're going to get later on into again, God creating the vast universe. Uh, and what's interesting about this, and as God is creating all of this, let me tell you why man could never, ever, even though we have great leaps of technology, why Star Trek can never happen, because of the sinfulness of man. Okay, so, but when God comes, notice his power will establish his rule. His power will establish his rule. So at that time, those who argue and malign God for not eradicating evil, they're going to be the ones complaining the most, because remember, that rule is going to extend to everyone. So it says right here that he comes with strength, and his power establishes rules. Now, let me say this: I cannot prove the existence of God. I cannot prove these claims are true. God will. I can only tell you that here is what we're going to see. Here is what we're going to look for when he comes. So in other words, that God establishing his sovereignty is going to be God on God, not me. But when he comes, this is what he says he's going to do. He's going to come with strength, and then his power will establish his rule. The Bible talks about Jesus ruling the nations with the rod of iron and their sternness. Yes, it's going to be Jesus' way or the highway. Okay? But it will also be in righteousness and in justice. All right, like I said, I'm doing a small crowd because these are some great um, declarations here, and I'm going to get to next time. I'm going to get into next time the fact that he says his reward is with him. I'll get to that later. Um, but again, God is, as we move forward in Isaiah, there's going to be some great declarations God is going to make. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next study.